Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to do a quick presentation based on the sample descriptive essay in your Angel file folder, just so hopefully you can get a better idea of what it is I'm looking for when you do your descriptive essay. In the beginning, I said your narrative essay would probably be the easiest and most enjoyable, but the the descriptive essay should also prove to be pretty fun because it gives you an idea, opportunity to be a little more creative. Although this isn't a creative writing class, so get all of your creative writing excitement out with this last descriptive essay, because everything else will probably be a little more textbook in terms of composition and rhetoric. So let's look at the first paragraph in this essay. First of all, notice that it is properly formatted. It is Times New Roman font, size 12 or 12 point Times New Roman font, although it's a little bigger here for these purposes, but it is 12 point. You have your heading here at the top, and you have your title. Okay, you have your title, and you have 1-inch margins on each side, and you have 5 space indent for each paragraph. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's follow along here as I just read this first paragraph. It says, "I have always been fascinated by carnival rides. It amazes me that average, ordinary people eagerly trade in the serenity of the ground for the chance to be tossed through the air like vegetables in a food processor. It amazes me that at some time in history someone thought that people would enjoy this, and that person invented what must have been the first of these terrifying machines. For me, it is precisely the thrill and excitement of having survived the ride that keeps me coming back for more." Okay, I've already said to you before that I am a stickler for thesis statements, so if you just look at this last sentence here, of course he has his thesis statement there, and it says, "For me, it is precisely the thrill and excitement of having survived the ride that keeps me coming back for more." Here he tells you about the thrill and the excitement and having survived the ride, and the fact that he comes back for more. And I'm just going to use he throughout this essay because to me it just sounds like a very masculine writing. I don't know why. It could very well be a female, but he is going to work for me today. So he's telling us all of these things in the thesis statement, and I promise you, you will see each of those things again throughout the essay. He starts off with, "I have always been fascinated by carnival rides." He gets right to the point. Right away you know that this is going to be about carnival rides. And he says that it amazes me that average, ordinary people eagerly trade in the serenity of the ground. The serenity, the security would have been a good word as well, of the ground for the chance to be tossed through the air like vegetables in a food processor. Now, wow, I don't know if any of you cook, but obviously people can't be tossed in the air like vegetables in a food processor, but if they were, we'd know what it looked like because we have our imagery here, right? And it says that, let's see, the person that invented this must have been the first of these terrifying machines, right? So I don't know. I'm expecting actually a roller coaster. I know it's been some years since I've been on a roller coaster, and I've gotten to the point now where I don't need to get on another one ever again. But he makes it sound not so much fun, but scary, right? So you have these images already in this first paragraph. Let's go to the next paragraph. It says, "My first experience with the carnival ride was a Ferris wheel," right? I'm a little surprised that it's a Ferris wheel because to me Ferris wheels aren't scary. It's the roller coasters that are a little scarier. He says, looking at that looming monstrosity spinning the life out of its sardine-caged occupants, I was dumbstruck. It was huge, smoky, noisy, and not a little intimidating. Ever since that initial impression became fossilized in my imagination years ago, these rides have reminded me of mythical beasts, amazing dinosaurs carrying off their screaming passengers like sacrificial virgins. Even the droning sound of their engines brings to mind the great roar of a fire-breathing dragon with smoke spewing from its exhaust pipe nostrils. Now, wow, he really just nails it here in this second paragraph with all of this imagery. First of all, he says, looking at that looming monstrosity. Now, he could have said, looking at that big machine, looking at that big wheel, looking at that huge ride, but wow, a looming monstrosity. Remember in the video that I posted just before this one, where it talks about the list of things that to remember and when you are writing a descriptive essay, and it talked about the use of vivid language, choosing vivid language, choosing tempestuous instead of violent, or choosing miserly instead of cheap. Well, here he uses looming monstrosity instead of simply just big, right? You know that it's huge if it's a monstrosity. And then it says, spinning the life out of its sardine-caged occupants. Again, if you've ever eaten sardines, perhaps when you've had the mumps, I know in my household that's the way it was. Sardines are packed very tightly in this little small can. So if you can imagine people being packed like sardines in a cage in this looming monstrosity, it actually that sounds actually like something out of The Matrix or one of those scary movies, rather than a Ferris wheel. But then he says it was huge, smoky, noisy, and not a little intimidating. Not a little intimidating, right? So, I mean, here you have this monstrosity, and he further describes it to you by saying it was huge, smoky, noisy, right, and intimidating. Ever since that impression became fossilized in my mind. Now here he could have said, ever since this happened, or ever since I remember this, but he says that it became fossilized in his imagination. If you know what fossils are those, you know, the animal bones and fish bones that are often the impression of them are often crystallized in the size of caves or mountains or something like that. So it's not just it's an experience that he remembers, it's fossilized, right, in his imagination. It says these rides have reminded me of what? Mythical beast, right? Mythical beast, amazing dinosaurs carrying off their screaming passengers like sacrificial virgins. Can you imagine? I mean, he has these mythical beasts. Why would you even want to get on this ride, right? After he describes it, you might not want to even get on it because he does such a great job of telling you what it's like. And nobody wants to be a screaming passenger or a sacrificial virgin being carried off by a dinosaur, but that's how he describes it. It says, even the droning sounds of their engines bring to mind what? The great roar of a fire-breathing dragon. So he kind of has this analogy with this dragon, and says with smoke spewing from its exhaust pipe nostrils, right? And of course, here you have what we commonly call a metaphor, right? It compares two things without using the word like or as. Here is the metaphor, but up here, of course, where he says dinosaurs carrying off their screaming passengers like a sacrificial virgin, this here is a simile. So you might want to look those up in order to get a better idea of what, you know, of how to use them in your paper, right? So that's a great second paragraph, and a great example of how to make your essay a little more exciting, a little more vivid, and much like the descriptive essay should be. This next paragraph says, the first ride on one of these fantastic beasts, not just this ride, but this fantastic beast, okay? We know it wasn't a beast, but that's how he describes it. Gave me an instant rush of adrenaline. As the death-defying ride started, a lump in my throat pulsed like a dislodged heart ready to walk the plank. Now, even in the movies, we haven't actually seen the actual heart, right, pulsing across a plank in order to be thrown overboard. But imagine that if you were walking the plank and someone had you on a plank and you had to jump off or be pushed off into the ocean, your heart would literally, well, maybe not literally, but you'd feel as though your heart was literally sitting on your chest, pulsing, right? Pulsing loudly. And it says, as the ride gained speed, the resistance to gravity, okay, built up against my body until I was unable to move. An almost imperceptible, not imperceptible, just almost imperceptible pause as the wheel reached the top of its climb allowed my body to relax in a brief state of normalcy. Then there was an assault of stomach-turning weightlessness, okay? Not it just made my stomach turn, but it's stomach-turning weightlessness as the machine continued its rotation and I descended back toward the earth. I would have put a comma here between rotation and because that's two sentences there. And so it says a cymbal-like crash vibrated through the air as the wheel reached the bottom. Much to my surprise, I began to rise again. So again, he continues with this really incredible description. And it's not a very long essay. It's actually a pretty short essay. I want yours to be a little longer than this, the 5 paragraphs, but I'd like for you to try to get it up to about 700 words. On that first paragraph, the narrative, a few of you were a little short of 700 words, but if you can get to 600-700, that would be really good. Sorry, I think I clicked off there for a second. So yeah, and then his last paragraph is a short paragraph. I'm not crazy about these little short paragraphs like this, but I guess it works because he does restate his thesis. My fascination with these fantastic flights is deeply ingrained in my soul. A trip on the wonderful Ferris wheel never fails to thrill me. Although I am becoming older and have less time or less inclination to play, the childlike thrill I have on Ferris wheels, of course, continues with each and every ride, which means he keeps going back for more. Again, he makes a Ferris wheel sound really scary. But that was his experience, and that's what he wanted you to feel. And he does a very good job at it. So I hope this gives you a better idea of what I'm looking for in your descriptive essay. Take some time on it. Make sure you don't wait until the last minute to start it, because you don't want to just throw something together, right? So I didn't mean to take up this much of your time, but be that as it may, have a great day, and we'll talk soon.